Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of the Fantasy Football Fallout. This episode is all about Green Bay versus Oakland, specifically how Oakland can beat Green Bay, how Green Bay can beat Oakland. It's a game preview of sorts, and then, of course, we are going to be predicting the game plan for both teams and how that will affect your fantasy football teams. The first thing I want to do is quickly run through the injury report on both sides, and as you can see, Oakland, you have Darren Waller. The big one is Tyrell Williams is doubtful. The good news for Oakland is they have J.J. Nelson back, and Zay Jones. We don't really know how integrated he will be in this offense at this point, but we know Oakland needs wide receivers. Zay Jones came over before their bye week, so I do think that they've had a bit of time to get him up and running. He's a deep threat. It's something this offense needs. I'm very interested to see how often they use him. He might be on a snap count. He might not. We'll see. Certainly, if Tyrell Williams is out, Zay Jones might be somebody you want to pick up just as a flyer in daily fantasy football. And J.J. Nelson, I think, is a very underrated guy. He's been impactful in his time in the NFL. We haven't really seen him with the Raiders yet this season. And given how this offense has been able to hit Tyrell Williams so often, I think that J.J. Nelson's presence there will help Tyrell Williams when he's on the field, and we don't know. He is doubtful this week, as we said, and B, he's really just going to help the passing attack as a whole. Now, on the Packers side, basically, if you are a pass receiver, you got Geronimo, Allison, Valdes-Scantling, obviously Davante Adams, Jimmy Graham, Tanyan. If you catch a pass for Green Bay, you're questionable this week. Aaron Rodgers is even questionable, for crying out loud. Now, who's going to play? I don't know. My biggest concern for the Packers is Davante Adams and Geronimo, Allison. I think Valdes-Scantling will play, but it's something that we're going to want to, as a betting and fantasy football community, look at NFL.com/inactives. You can always see the inactives report, an hour before the game. So if they're inserted in your lineups, just keep an eye out. But we'll also keep an eye out. What I want to do, though, is I want to assume, for purposes of this video, that everybody's going to play. So we'll move forward. Now, what you're looking at in this screen now is the offensive and defensive unit ranks. And what I like to do, instead of just saying, hey, offense and offense, defense and defense, and so on, I like to put the opposition on the screen there. So you see the Raiders pass offense is 24th ranked in the league. The Packers pass defense is ranked 13th in the league, and so on and so forth. You got the pass defense for Oakland 22nd, the pass offense for Green Bay the 13th. Now the big mismatch here, if you're looking at all these competition, these unit competitions, is the run offense for Oakland is 8th. The run defense for Green Bay is 23rd. Okay, so that's like a plus 15 there. That's pretty high. When you're talking about half the league in between those two units, that's a competitive advantage for Oakland. And here's a spoiler alert, this is going to be one of their paths to success. Now, something to keep in mind, okay, and it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. I don't know if it is of yours, and please comment if you agree or disagree. But, a lot of this stuff, a lot of these unit grades, and what you see when you play fantasy football, if you're looking at like an ESPN or CBS or whoever, and you see, the Green Bay Packers give up the 10th most receiving or points to receivers in fantasy football land. That's kind of a misleading stat. If you use that, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let me tell you why. Take a team. Let's just say the first 2 weeks of the season, Kansas City, right? Their offense looked incredible. We were all talking about how great they looked. Well, think about this. If Kansas City's winning in their games by 20 points, what's the opposing offense going to do? Right? I think Jacksonville played them in the first 2 weeks of the season. What are they going to do? Are they going to run Leonard Fournette in the fourth quarter when they're down by 20? Or are they going to let Gardner Minshew let the ball fly, right? And what's that going to do to their pass defense rank? They're going to give up more yardage because they're going to be playing a prevent defense, and more teams are going to have to pass. They're not going to run out the clock. And so Kansas City's, when their offense gets to a lead, Kansas City's defense is not really challenged in the run game. And so when you see some of these ranked, you have to consider the types of games that they've been playing in. Now, Green Bay is interesting because they're a 5-1 team, but they've been playing in a lot of close games. So their pass defense is ranked 13th, and their run defense is ranked 23rd. When you're a team that's 5-1, and you see the run defense as bad as it is, what that tells me, as somebody who likes to bet on sports and handicap sports and all this stuff, it tells me that they've played in a lot of close games that could have gone either way. And I think even Packers fans would say that. Now, are they a bad team? No, I like the Packers quite a bit. I like watching them. I enjoy watching Aaron Rodgers play. But on the Oakland side, you can see, and something that I've noticed when I've watched Oakland, and I do watch every single game of the season, what I've noticed with Oakland is they jump out more often than not. They jump out to a quick lead, which allows them to then continue to be patient and execute their game plan. When you see this run offense as 8th, that is a John Gruden staple. He wants to establish the run, and he's patient with the run even if he's losing. And then they went out to establish the run against the Bears, that vaunted Bears defense in London, and they did it to quite some success. So what do I see here? I don't really glean a lot of stuff from these types of stats, but I do see that the run offense in Oakland is going to be a key to this game, and the run defense for Green Bay is going to be a key to this game. Okay, now let's move it on to what I call the betting analytics stats. Now, what a lot of bettors like to traditionally look at is the yards per play margin. They also want to look at red zone percentage. They also want to look at third down percentage and turnover margin. So let's just quickly run through the numbers, and I'll kind of, if you're not familiar, I'll just really quickly tell you kind of what they mean. Now, the Raiders give up. They average 5.7 yards per play. The Packers average 5.7 yards per play given up. Conversely, the Packers average 5.5 yards per play, and the defense for the Raiders give up 5.8 yards per play. Now, what is the margin there? The margin for the Raiders is minus 0.1 per play, and the Packers margin is minus 0.2 per play. Not that great, really, which is funny for a 5-1 team. But what that tells you is actually per play, the Raiders are just a hair ahead in terms of yardage per play. Now, if you look at red zone percentage versus offense versus defense, you see the Raiders score nearly 60% touchdown percentage when they're in the red zone. That's good for, I think, top 5 in the league, if I remember correctly. And the Packers defense is actually pretty good as well. They give up 50% touchdowns in the red zone. That's I think a middle of the road ranking. Conversely, the Raiders not so great with their red zone defense, and the Packers really good with their red zone offense. Actually, a little bit better than Oakland. So you see that I would say in terms of red zone percentage, although the Packers in yards per play are a little bit down, I think the red zone percentage for the Packers is higher up. In terms of turnover margin, the Packers are really good. They're averaging about 0.7 in the plus in terms of turnovers per game generated, and the Raiders are minus 0.2. So that's basically a full possession that Green Bay gets to steal away from Oakland if the averages hold. And then you look at third down conversions, though. The Raiders are better on third down than the Packers defense is able to hold, and the Raiders defense holds 46% of the time, and the Green Bay Packers convert 31% of the time. So on third downs, getting off the field, Oakland's a little bit better. Analytically speaking, if I'm in better, I look at these things and I think, man, they're really evening out. And this line opened up at 6.5, and early in this week, I thought, man, that's really high for this game. I really think Oakland's going to come out. They've started strong, and I think all but one of their games, the Minnesota game was a rough start, and they never really got it going. But the other games, including the loss to Kansas City, they've come out with some energy. So if Oakland can come out, and this brings me to, I guess, the game plan and the keys to success. Oakland's, what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to establish their run early. We already talked about the run offense for that offensive run unit for Oakland is 8th. The defensive unit in terms of yardage given up for Green Bay is 23rd. The Raiders are going to want to establish that run, lean on that defensive line with their offensive line, their big offensive line, and keep Rodgers off the field. They want to keep themselves into third and manageable situations like they have this season, so they can give Derek Carr high percentage plays and options too. You want to be two-dimensional, not one-dimensional. They want to keep converting those third downs, as I said. Be aggressive on fourth downs because, again, statistically speaking, this team gives up one more possession per game than Green Bay does in terms of turnover margin. And you look at the red zone percentages, that favors Green Bay. Oakland's going to have to convert, especially if it's like 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 inside the red zone. They're going to want to keep that going. So they're going to want to be aggressive on fourth down, and keep this in mind in terms of fourth down percentage. I think Oakland has converted about 83% this season. Not a huge sample size, but still pretty good at converting those fourth downs. Green Bay has not converted a fourth down. So whether it's conservatism, whether it's play calling, whatever it is, Green Bay's not the best at staying on the field, but their defense is kind of picking up their offense and their play calling. That, again, if we're talking about betting and we're talking about predicting the game, I give a slight advantage to the coaching staff of Oakland than I do to Green Bay. But I think in terms of personnel on the field, I give a slight advantage, and really it's Aaron Rodgers and his advantage over Derek Carr. The personnel on the field, I give Green Bay the advantage there, assuming health, and that's a big assumption this week. Lastly, for Oakland, they have to hit their field goals. One of the things that Green Bay is doing well is hitting their field goals. Oakland is not doing so well hitting their field goals. So Oakland, control the clock. They're going to run the ball. They're going to attack Green Bay with the run. In the passing game, Green Bay is susceptible to giving up yardage to receivers. They're pretty good against tight ends. So although you would think Oakland is going to try to hit Darren Waller, and I'm sure they will, and if Waller's out, Moreau or somebody like that, Carrier if he's activated or whatever the case may be, it's actually the matchup here is they're going to want to hit Zay Jones over the top. They're going to want to hit J.J. Nelson and definitely Tyrell Williams, obviously, if he's available. That's not to say that Darren Waller isn't a start by any means in fantasy purposes. I'm just saying that if Oakland is going to attack this defense, it's going to be deep to the receivers. That's where the weakness lies for Green Bay in terms of the game plan. They're going to have to slam Josh Jacobs up the middle. The screen game with Jalen Richards, I don't think it's great this week. I'm sure they'll try it and they'll test it, but this is going to have to be receivers winning competition, their competition against the Green Bay defensive backs. And again, hit their field goals. When you get in the red zone, if you can't get a touchdown, you have to convert the field goals if you're Oakland. You have to hit your field goals. For the Green Bay Packers, what will they do? I think that they will try to establish the run as they have. Now, Oakland, I think, is going to come out with energy. I think Gruden will have this team fired up. Will they establish the run? Analytically speaking, and we'll get to the fantasy football projections in just a second, analytically speaking, I believe yes. However, my gut is telling me when I look at this matchup and I look at the energy and I look at the coaching, I think Green Bay is going to have tough sledding early establishing the run. I could be wrong, and certainly my computer analytics are telling me so. But again, I watch every game. I just have this feeling that Paul Guenther is going to have this team and John Gruden is going to have this team ready to play. And I think the running lanes are going to be tough early. So Green Bay, the weakness I think for Oakland is actually attacking people with the slot receiver and attacking people with the tight end. Now, as I said, basically every single pass catcher for Green Bay is questionable this week. But Jimmy Graham or a tight end, somebody out there has to play. That brings me to the third, right? The third point here. Somebody has to be a factor at that tight end position or that slot position, whether it's Geronimo, Allison running out of the slot, whether it's one of these young talented guys, whether it's Kumaro or I think Luzardo, or Tanya, whoever the case it may be. They have to do something to open up the middle and take advantage of kind of the weak outside linebackers for Oakland. Stay on the field. They can't be doing a lot of 3 and out. They can't be missing third down conversions. They have to convert their third downs and don't give away yards on penalties. Oakland has that. They've been playing more disciplined brand of football throughout the season so far. Green Bay, I think, is minus 14 yards per game in penalty yardage, so don't give up penalties. Green Bay, in terms of personnel, should control this game. I think Oakland is going to make this a tough game. It's going to be a street fight. I think the Green Bay Packers were just in a street fight in Monday Night Football, and they walked out with a win there. This is going to be a tough one. I think this week it's going to be a close one. That's why that 6.5 line, it was too much for me. I called personally a 26-24 victory. My computers, on the other hand, likes Green Bay a little bit. And that brings me to my RoccoBot predictions. If you're not familiar with RoccoBot, this is really what I named my my fantasy football analytics robot. Basically what I do, long story short, I'm not going to kill you with math here, but I take 8 different equations that measure a whole bunch of different stuff. I put them into a composite. What it does is it isolates matchups. I said before, are we looking at a tight end or a slot receiver? I don't look at receiver groups. I look at specific receiver positions on the field, the X, the Y, the slot, whatever you want to call it. But here's what RoccoBot spat out. And this is RoccoBot. This is not me. Derek Carr at 15.7. Josh Jacobs at 15.4. Jalen Richard at 7.3. Yada, yada, yada. You can see all of the projections on the screen. Quickly, and again, I did say I'm assuming everybody is healthy. What this shows me is if Davante Adams plays, Green Bay will have a better time in this game. Davante Adams has a mismatch. He gets in the end zone if he plays. Who else gets in the end zone for Green Bay? I don't know. Probably Aaron Jones would be my guess. For Oakland, it's all about Josh Jacobs. getting in the end zone. Darren Waller, this week I don't think this is the week for him to get in the end zone. I would love to say it is, but I don't know. He is questionable. 11.31. This does lead me to believe that he will get in the end zone in terms of projections, but really J.J. Nelson has to win a matchup, and I'm really curious to see Zay Jones. If Zay Jones can be a factor in this game, I really think Oakland can pull this out in a victory. I do think it's closer than 6.5. I am taking Oakland, although that line has been bet down to about 4.5 now. I still will be on Oakland's side there, but this is a game I think that's very, very close. It would not shock me at all to see Oakland win, but definitely there are paths to success for both teams. I would say in percentage, if you're looking at this as just purely from a code emotional robotic point of view, Green Bay has the advantage here, but Oakland has some really good positive energy there. I think ever since Antonio Brown was jettisoned off the team, this team's just been getting better and better. I think they got a good bond. I feel like they have some good chemistry there. So we'll see what happens. And coming off a bye week always helps as well. So there you go. There's an episode. Like I said, this is the first ever episode that I've done like this. Please give me some comments if you like it. I can do more games. If you don't like it, I guess just don't comment. But, like the video, subscribe to our channel, all that stuff. And if you want to see me kind of take a deep dive, or if you have any questions about any other games, I do this for every other game. I just don't always do videos for it. So this is kind of a test thing, and hope you liked it. I guess we'll catch you next week, early next week in the Fantasy Football Fallout after the Week 7 games, so I can tell you who to pick up, who to start for the following week, who the daily fantasy sleepers are, and so on and so forth. Thanks, everyone.